Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Political State Podcast, the first episode of 2019. Today's Friday, January 4th. And in this first episode of the new year, it's actually a return to year one. Dale Denwalt sitting over here to my right. Dale, when we first launched this podcast, we did it from the podcast studio. And then in year two, we went to the video studio. And now as we enter year three, we are back in the podcast studio. If you were listening, obviously you were listening via podcast, but we still have a camera in the corner, so there is a video element. But Political State Podcast is back to its original form as a podcast.
With some great podcast mics.
Yeah, we've got some great podcast mics, a window outlooking the streetcar passing by. Hopefully a little better sound quality for our listeners. But like I said, we do have a camera in the corner, so we still have that video element. And I think also maybe more of a better conversation, maybe more intimate conversation that podcast allows you without having the kind of the bright lights of the video studio. But our guest this week can actually tell us which one, how they are different, video studio versus podcast, because she's been in the video studio, now she's in the podcast, and that is Oklahoma County Commissioner Carrie Blumert. Commissioner, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me today.
Yeah, we had you on several weeks ago, right after the election. That was in the video studio, so now here we are in the podcast, our first guest of 2019. Yes. We appreciate that. Justin Wingeter, Oklahoman's federal government reporter, also in studio with us. Justin, how's it going? Happy New Year.
Good. Happy New Year.
You're standing. We all have stools, but you are choosing to do this podcast on your feet.
For now. I may sit later. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, in today's episode, being the new year, we're going to discuss some New Year's resolutions for some Oklahoma political figures. Representative Kendra Horn of Oklahoma's 5th District took office this week. We're going to discuss that and the government shutdown. But Commissioner, we wanted to talk to you in this first half of the episode about your new job. You're sworn in this week, right?
Yes, Wednesday morning I was sworn in.
Wednesday. So now it's official. You're officially a commissioner. And I wanted to ask you, you tweeted this week that you referred to having a 100-day agenda.
Yes.
That you were going to hope to have some details really soon.
Yes.
I'm sure you're still kind of working on that, but I was curious, my first question to you is going to be, can you kind of reveal a little bit to us what that first 100-day agenda is going to be?
That's actually why I was late to taping, because I was meeting with my staff to go over the agenda. I am very excited to be able to show this to the voters and to the constituents. A lot of it just starts with building relationships with people who can work on our jail, who can work on our juvenile center, and then ways to get people better access to our drug court, our mental health courts, our veteran courts. And then what a lot of people don't know is that the county has a social services department where we have a county pharmacy. We provide small grants to social service agencies. And so my staff and I are talking about ways to improve those services, kind of beef them up, maybe add a component that really focuses on the homeless population. So taking that aspect of county government that's kind of hidden away and bringing it to light more and getting it to be able to serve more people.
Yeah, I imagine introducing people to county service is going to be a major part, because a lot of people, casual, residents of the city who may not be paying that much attention to politics probably aren't as familiar with county government as they would state government, city hall, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I might have said this on the last time I was on the podcast, but a lot of my campaigning was educating people on what county government does and what a commissioner does and how is public health involved in that, because that's my background is public health. So I'm a bit of a nerd. I've been compared to Leslie Knope, which is maybe the highest honor you could bestow on me, of going out and educating people of what their government's doing for them. So being a young person in their 30s, I like using Twitter, I like using Facebook and Instagram. And so yesterday I put out a picture of what our road crews were doing, and I hope to keep doing that with everything I'm working on, keep putting it out there, showing people what county government's doing.
So do you have a Ron Swanson in the office then yet, if that makes you Leslie Knope?
Ooh, I don't think so yet. There probably is one out there.
Yeah. Well, you referred to the jail, and that's been, for even casual observers of county government, that's kind of the thing that comes to mind the most. And, one of the things that you also said earlier this week, you said 99% of the lawsuits that are filed against the Board of County Commissioners are related to the jail, which has seen 38 deaths since 2015.
Yes, and that is honestly what got me to really consider running for this position, is hearing how many deaths were happening in our jail and knowing that that is not a normal number. And seeing how my background is public health and mental health specifically, how can we prevent these? A lot of these deaths should not be happening in our jail. So yeah, that was really what got me to run for this seat.
Now, you're a pretty progressive Democrat. I know what a progressive looks like in Congress. I know what it looks like in the legislature. What does that mean for county government, though? What does it mean to be a progressive?
That's a really good question. I am learning that as a young female progressive in county government, I'm very much in the minority, which I'm okay with. It still looks like building relationships with people across the aisle. Commissioner Calvi and I probably disagree on a lot of issues, but we can agree on things that need to be fixed with our jail. We can agree on getting people access to mental health treatment and addiction recovery programs. So I think it means finding things with people that you might disagree with 99 things and one thing you can agree on. Well, then that's what we're going to work on together.
Yeah.
So,
You mentioned forming some partnerships or forming relationships with people around these issues. Does that mean bringing in organizations that may have a say in how best to do things, say, at the jail?
Yeah. So this morning I was talking with my staff about a program called Stepping Up. It is through the National Association of Counties, and locally the Mental Health Association of Oklahoma has really pushed it, and it's a nationwide kind of network of counties that are working on reducing the number of people with mental illness in county jails. I'm hoping to work with the other commissioners and join this Stepping Up program to give us more resources and more support to figure out how to address the mental health issues in our jail. So, yeah, people like North Care, Red Rock, Hope, I mean, these are all community services who are already already serving people in this way, and so what's the best way to bring them on? And then with our, we refer to it as CJAC, but it stands for Criminal Justice Advisory Council. That group meets once a month, and it is people from the chamber, the district attorney's office, the sheriff, city manager, Commissioner Terry White with Department of Mental Health. So they are all finally sitting in a room every week, face-to-face, talking about how can we improve this jail.
Now, there's been a lot of criminal justice reform on the state level with the legislature. Is there anything that you feel like either the county missed out on or that the county can do now that now that you've seen it on the state level?
Yeah.
Is there any best practices you can pull down from that fight?
Ooh, that's a good question. And that I actually saw this morning Representative Mickey Dolan say that he was drafting legislation to reduce the amount of time that people are in our jail for. Did you all see this?
I didn't see that, no.
Okay. It was something from it was pertaining to a certain, and I wish I had it pulled up right now, pertaining to a certain charge, reducing the amount of time that someone can legally spend in jail for a certain charge. It lowered it down to like 2 days. So I would be very much in support of looking at other counties and other local criminal justice systems of what their range is for how long someone can stay in jail for certain charges. Because a lot of, everyone sitting in our jail is awaiting trial or awaiting sentencing.
Yeah.
So all those people have not been convicted of anything. They're waiting. So it's a drain on our resources. It's a drain on taxpayers to house those people when they haven't even been convicted yet of their crime.
Yeah, some of that state policy has a big impact, obviously,
Yeah.
on the jail. When there's such a large number of people who are being picked up because they haven't paid their fines.
Yeah.
Or fees, and that
Or
becomes
failure
a
to
charge, and they
appear.
didn't appear.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's kind of a cycle on that. There are some steps that can be taken to improve the status of the jail. And there has been some steps recently. I mean, there's a new healthcare provider, correct?
Yes, we are using Turnkey Health now as of July 1st, 2018 for a healthcare provider in the jail. And
so some ways to bring some improvement there, but I think when you look at the county jail, that there's this agreement that there needs to be some kind of holistic change, a new facility, a new way of doing things. One of the things that you've pointed out is that Oklahoma County is the only county in the state that doesn't have a dedicated sales tax going towards the county jail or criminal justice system in that county. It is the state's largest county. Is that something you throw out there as just the reality of why there's a challenge when it comes to funding, or is that something you think needs to change? I mean, is that something you'd like to see?
I would be in support of changing it. I know a lot of other entities in our city have a pretty big say in that. I've talked with a lot of people about MAPS 4 and possibly including something related to the jail or related to a holistic treatment center near the jail as part of MAPS 4. That's something I would be interested in.
And what kind of response do you get from that? Because that would be a pretty big shift in where we've seen MAPS projects go before.
I have heard it been said from people with the city saying that they like this idea. So I think people have an appetite for it now that they've seen the success of Palomar, where all these services for domestic violence victims are in one location. I talked with someone the other day saying we should just replicate Palomar for people within our criminal justice system. So I would be very much in support of that. But yeah, passing that county-wide sales tax is going to be a really interesting animal. Number one, most people don't like taxes. So we would have to really prove the case that we are changing the way we're running our jail. We're changing the way our criminal justice system operates to give people better access to treatment and send them out better than how we found them.
And you might be up for a fight against people who want MAPS money to go outside of the central OKC
Correct.
metro area.
Correct. And I heard that a lot when I was campaigning. People complained that, downtown is getting all the resources, all the money, and they wanted MAPS money to go other places.
Although that would be, even though the jail is in downtown, I mean, I don't know that it would be fair to say that would be a focus of downtown issues. I mean,
Right.
we're talking about like the streetcar and the
Yeah.
new arena and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But the people that are being impacted the most by the jail are not people who are living downtown and working
Yeah.
downtown for the most part.
Yeah.
What? So and just to separate the issue, so you're talking about there, maybe including in MAPS or maybe having a dedicated sales tax.
Yeah.
What would be that process for the county commissioners? Is there I imagine that the county commissioners, one vehicle would be that they would have to approve putting something on the ballot.
Correct.
Do you feel like there is an appetite amongst your fellow commissioners to do this?
This has not come up with us yet. This is my third day on the job.
Yeah.
And due to the Open Meeting Act, anytime I have a conversation with another commissioner, it has to be in an open meeting. So this probably will be something that comes up in a Board of County Commissioner meeting. So I don't know yet how Commissioner Calvi or how Commissioner Mon feels about a countywide sales tax. I know traditionally Commissioner Calvi is not supportive of more taxes, but I know he is supportive of a better jail and a different, mental health treatment. And so I'd be curious to see what he thinks about a countywide sales tax.
So even if other commissioners were open to the idea, I would imagine that there would have to be a strong sell job to the community.
Yes.
Is that I don't want to put words in your mouth. Like I said, just day 3, and I'm not trying to say, hey, new Commissioner Blumert is proposing a new countywide tax.
Please don't say that.
But is that something? Do you would you envision yourself as kind of being the salesman or saleswoman on this issue? Once again, I know we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but this is an important issue.
Yeah, I believe, as in speaking about the role of county government, I don't believe we can advocate for that. We can educate the public.
That's what I'm saying. You would have to be the face for educating people on why this is important.
Correct. Yes, and we could tailor that sales tax. Let's say the voters approve to build a new jail. We could tailor that sales tax to the first 5 years. It's 1 penny, and then after that, it goes down to a quarter of a penny to fund operations. So there's ways that it's not just a solid 1 cent or 2 cents. We can tailor it to how we think we need it. So.
What numbers are we talking about here? Do you have any idea? Has there been numbers thrown out about how much it would cost to build a new jail, a new facility?
I have them back at my office,
Okay,
but
that's
I
fine.
don't have
We're
them
putting you on the spot
memorized
here, and like I said, I'm not trying to paint you as waving the banner for a tax increase. I appreciate you being candid about it.
Yeah.
But it is an important issue, and like I
Yeah.
said, I don't think we're at a place with the county jail where we're looking for a Band-Aid.
Correct.
There's a holistic change that's going
Correct.
to have to happen.
And we are having to do continual maintenance on our jail, regardless of whether or not we're building a new facility. Because even if today we were to break ground on a new facility, we would still be in our current facility for 3 to 5 more years. So if the plumbing needs to be fixed, we can't really wait 3 to 5 years. So it's this balance of how much money do we put into the current building and how much do we put into a new building.
And it's in horrible shape.
Oh, yeah. If you're listening to this podcast and you have not been in our county jail, we do offer citizen tours. That is led by a man named Timothy Tardibono, who is with the Criminal Justice Advisory Council. So he will take anyone through that jail. It's about an 1.5-hour process. And afterwards, he'll take you to, typically he takes people to remerge to let them see what recovery programs can look like and what treatment programs can look like. So I encourage everyone to go through the jail just to have a better understanding of what that building is.
Yeah, and that wouldn't be like this is not like your family-friendly tour of like, hey, let's tour the arena or something like that. I mean, this is a sobering experience of what the reality of the jail is like. I mean, I remember talking last year to a member of law enforcement for a story that had been arrested and had spent some time in the county jail. And afterwards, he was like, I can't believe we send people there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really
when
amazing.
you go into the pods and when you see inmates, waiting, shackled up on the wall, waiting to see their attorney, you feel like it's not 2019. I mean, it feels as if you've gone back in time. So I always say I would love to have been a fly on the wall when the design of that building was decided upon, just because I'd like to know what they were thinking.
Yeah.
So.
You would have been shouting, "Fly! Don't do this! Don't do that!"
Yes. And for those of you who don't know, our jail is a 13-story high-rise, which is not typical of how jails are built.
Yeah.
There's no space for programming. There's no space to have AA meetings or yoga. There's no space for medical. So they have actually cleared out the 13th floor, and our medical providers operate out of cells where the doors have been removed. So it's the facility is not conducive to any sort of treatment or holistic type treatment. So,
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier being a minority. You went to an orientation, if I recall correctly, that you it was kind of put in stark terms. You kind of saw it right there in front of you, right? I mean, you were.
I went to there's the Association of County Commissioners of Oklahoma. So I went to a 3-day training for all newly elected county commissioners. And I was a little bit late because I had a meeting right before, and I walked in, and I was in a suit and heels. I thought it was a very professional training. But I walked in, and it was a room of about 50 to 60 white men, all in cowboy boots and jeans and their Carhartt jackets. And I immediately knew, okay, I'm in the minority. And several of them were very nice to me and befriended me, and no one was hostile towards me. But I could tell the look on their faces was kind of like, who are you? One man even asked me, "Are you a county commissioner?"
Oh.
And I said, "Yeah." So it was an interesting experience.
Have you got a cowboy hat yet?
I don't have a cowboy hat yet.
You need one. Every
one.
county commissioner.
I need one.
And it looks a little different. I mean, the county commissioner process, it looks a little different depending which county you're in.
Correct.
I mean, in terms of, you talk about a lot of guys in cowboy hats. That's because in most Oklahoma counties, which are most of them are rural.
Yes.
The county commissioner is kind of a known position.
Yes.
Here in Oklahoma City, you're sharing the stage with a lot of other levels of government as well.
Correct. In those rural counties, a large majority of a county commissioner's job is roads and bridges. And I was talking yesterday with another reporter, and she said, "Why have women not historically been county commissioners?" And I said, I think it's just because women might not see themselves as someone who wants to work on roads and bridges. That doesn't mean that they can't. It just historically a lot of women haven't entered that field. But in more urban counties like Tulsa, Oklahoma City, roads and bridges are still part of my job, but they're not as much as they are in those rural counties.
Yeah. Well, that's why your election can be so important, not to just reduce you to your gender, but you talk about a lot of women that may not think about that position. And so now with you, being a vocal county commissioner and sharing your experience, that has to lead some women to say, well, maybe this is a position that I want to, an important position that I want to run for.
So there are 7 female county commissioners in our state right now, and I would love to somehow over the next year get all 7 of us in the same room and talk about how we can get more women into county government.
7 out of how many?
231.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I will not try to name all of them right now, but Commissioner Karen Keith is in Tulsa County, so she's kind of the first one on my list to go talk to.
Wow.
Yeah.
So on that sobering number, let's move on. Before we move on to some of our other topics, give us a brief explanation of kind of what this, you talk about your staff and your office. Like, what does that look like for a county commissioner here in Oklahoma County?
So every county commissioner has a chief deputy, which some people might refer to as your chief of staff. And that person, if I have to miss a board meeting, that person is legally allowed to sit in my place and vote on my behalf. So we are kind of seen as one decision-making entity, I guess.
And who is that for you?
Joe Blau.
Okay.
And he was Commissioner Johnson's chief deputy. And I believe he was originally hired by Commissioner Jim Roth. So he has a lot of institutional knowledge. He's been around for a while, and he has been extremely helpful to me. So that's Joe Blau. And then my first deputy is Cody Compton. Every commissioner does not have to have a first deputy. I know Commissioner Calvi has his chief deputy, and then he's hired a specific criminal justice policy director who kind of fits in that spot of his first deputy. So each commissioner kind of gets to choose who they hire and for what based on what they want to work on. And then you typically have someone who does constituent services, maybe administrative type work. So in our office, that is Jerry Franklin. Okay. So, yeah.
Right. Well, day 3 and already hitting the ground running.
Yeah.
Well underway.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
And we tried to give you even more work as you sat here. Ben tried to give you a whole nother agenda.
Definitely. Well, let's move on a little bit to some other political topics taking place right now. One that's not just in Oklahoma but across the nation. That is the partial government shutdown. So, Justin, real quick, give us an update of where we stand on Friday. It's something you've been covering, especially the impact here in Oklahoma.
Yeah, not much new. I mean, the House passed. Yeah, it's still shut down. The House passed a bill last night, Thursday night. It was a Democratic bill, and it passed the House because the House is now Democratic, and the Republican-controlled Senate does not have any interest in that bill. So we're back to square one. There were press conferences, just this afternoon as we're on the show here, and we'll see what comes out of that. But as far as I know, we're still completely partially shut down and at loggerheads basically between Trump and congressional Democrats.
And how many employees here in Oklahoma are impacted by this?
It's tough to get an exact number because it's across several different agencies, but FAA is hardest hit. I mean, 1,146 at the Monroney Center on the south side furloughed. Another 593 working without pay.
Wow.
So that is a real tough time right there. It's been described to me as a ghost town right now, a skeleton crew working the Monroney Center, which is a major employer here in the Oklahoma City area. Also across the street outside our window is the IRS building. IRS employees also furloughed right now. I think there's still a sign on the door that says that.
I can see it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Last time I checked. So,
do you know of any community services that have stepped up to help these families out?
And for what? Oh, for people who have been furloughed?
Yeah.
I don't. It's not to say it's not happening, but I'm not aware of any now.
Well, so interesting because you said how many people that were at what center? You said about 500 where?
Working without pay.
593 at the Monroney Center at the FAA. Yeah.
Working without pay. I mean, that would, if there was a company of 593 people that had closed, which is essentially, the impact is the same when you're not getting paid. I mean, that would be huge news. Now, a lot of people think, all right, well, at some point the government will reopen and they'll get their back pay, and traditionally that's been the case. This shutdown seems a little bit different because there's no real, end in sight right now. And who knows? They could get everything fixed or settled today. It doesn't seem likely. And the president is reportedly saying that it could last for months. I mean, that's pretty significant once you start getting past week 1 or week 2. I mean, if you're going a month without pay, that's a big hit.
So the way it worked, the federal employees got a paycheck on the 1st. I think it came on the 31st because the 1st was a holiday this month. So they got that paycheck, but the one that's supposed to come on the 15th is not guaranteed. And in fact, it won't happen if the government is still shut down, or it won't be complete. I mean, it'll be whatever you worked as of then. And so right now, I mean, that's you only get 2 paychecks a month if you're a federal employee. If one of them doesn't come, I mean, that's your ability to pay bills is hit pretty hard there. So,
and there's going to be a ripple effect because think about how many people live near the Monroney Center, the FAA. They may live in an apartment complex, or they may rent a house, or they may be there so much that they frequent the businesses around that part of town. And once they stop getting checks and are unable to pay their bills, there's going to be some real ripple effects.
And the Maroney Center is really important. I mean, the FAA Academy is there. That is shut down. We have a nationwide shortage right now of air traffic controllers. That's where they train all the air traffic controllers. And that academy is now shut down. 300-plus students had to go home. They had somewhere on their first or second day of school, they had planned to become air traffic controllers. The FAA has hired them, but they have to go through that training. If that school is closed, you can't train.
Yeah, and you've mentioned in some of your reporting that you can't just necessarily pick that back up, especially if it goes after a couple of weeks. I mean,
bureaucracies close and reopen in a very inefficient way. It just you don't just start and stop entire bureaucracies and governments and agencies. And so it's going to cost money to reopen it. It's going to cost a lot more money than they are actually debating right now in border security funding. So it's not typically an efficient idea to shut down the government.
So this showdown right now between the president and the House, which is now in Democratic control, and including a new Democratic member from Oklahoma, Kendra Horn, who took office yesterday, right?
Yesterday.
Who was the only Oklahoma member to vote for the funding package, right?
Right.
And so the others that are Republicans voted against it. She also supported Nancy Pelosi for Speaker, something she's been kind of quiet about, had expressed a desire for new leadership. Many other incoming Democratic representatives have said the same thing. Only about 15 Democrats voted against Pelosi, so
right.
Horn was in the vast majority of Democrats. But was that surprising at all, or just kind of what was your response when you saw that?
I wouldn't have been surprised either way. I think I thought Pelosi might go ahead and give her the ability to vote no, and just kind of a little comfort zone there, because Pelosi clearly had the votes, and Horn's going to have to come back and defend that vote. It's just a little easier if you vote present or something like that. But nonetheless, she went ahead and voted for Pelosi, and that's obviously Pelosi will be the speaker, or is the speaker now as of yesterday. So,
and that's obviously, Horn said that she was maybe wanting to see somebody different during the campaign, so that's why there's some attention on this vote. But also, this is a moderate district. I guess you could. It's going to be considered a swing district, in a couple of years. The Republicans have not counted this out to take back control. So there's going to be some interesting votes for her. As we move forward, where do you see some of these, potential, I say landmines, but just these moments where Horn is going to be judged a little differently for her votes because she is a Democrat, she is pretty progressive, but she still represents a district that's pretty purple.
There are going to be a lot of those. When we saw the House funding vote, or the government funding vote in the House last night, that is the first time of what will be many times where she is the lone vote in Oklahoma for something, and it ultimately passes, but probably doesn't go anywhere in the Senate. And that you're going to see that a lot. Obviously she's going to break with the other members of the delegation because they're Republicans and she's a Democrat. But I'm curious. I'm more interested in where she joins them, where she joins Republicans, because she is a moderate, and because she has to watch her, her votes when she comes back home. And that's, and again, even more than that, my first point, that she's a moderate. She is a pretty moderate Democrat, so she may join Republicans, and she may go against her party on a few things where they go maybe too far left, and she just says, I'm not ready to go there yet.
And I think Democrats here will probably forgive her for that, knowing that she is in a purple district. She'll have that luxury. And even the Pelosi vote, day one making that vote, the election is just around the corner, as it always is for the House. But I don't know that the Pelosi vote is going to, I'm sure some groups will try to use it against her. They did yesterday.
They sent out a text.
Some conservative groups did yesterday, but there'll be so many things that happen between now and when the campaign gets ramped up. I don't know that you're. I'm sure there'll be some ads that are trying to connect her to Pelosi, as there always is, but.
But there were months ago. There were before the election, before she ever took a vote. So
and she won the race.
Right.
Well, let's move in here, as we've got about 12 minutes left in this episode. I want to get to political New Year's resolutions, and Carrie, please join us on this. And maybe we'll ask you for yours as well. But I wanted to go through a list of a handful of prominent Oklahoma political figures, and I asked you guys this week that to come. But what are some resolutions, political resolutions that these individuals should have? And let's start at the top of the list. Governor-elect Kevin Stitt, who's going to take office officially on January 14th. You look at 2019. What is Governor-elect, soon-to-be Governor Stitt's, New Year's resolution? What do you think he's hoping for in 2019? Who's to take it first?
Who's up first? Yeah.
I'll go first. This isn't necessarily something he can control, but I think Governor Stitt hopes for a legislature that behaves.
What do you mean by that?
Well, he's going to have an agenda, and we're going to hear about it in a few days. But the legislature is notorious for going its own way. We've seen over the last 8 years that Governor Mary Fallin has had to pull teeth to get the legislature to pay attention to her. But Kevin Stitt is a different guy. He's a different kind of politician, so we may see something a little bit different. And his honeymoon period is this first legislative session. So he might have enough political pull in the legislature to get them to take a look at his policies and initiatives and maybe toe the line, so to speak.
Well, most legislative leaders right now are still, kind of singing Kumbaya. There is this honeymoon period that we're in right now, and a lot of them are saying, hey, we're working together with the executive branch. Everything's great. It's never felt like this before. The cold, harsh reality is that the state capitol will hit at some point, whether that's, January 14th or May or whenever it is, but it's going to happen at some point. But yes, a good one, a legislature that will play ball, especially when you're a new governor that's got quite an aggressive agenda.
Yeah, mine was remarkably similar. It was going to be, I was going to put it more on Stitt to work with the legislature a little more than Dale did there. But to me, his tenure will be defined by his ability to work with the legislature. It should be easy enough. They're all Republicans. It seems easy. But he comes in with a mentality that government has not worked for a long time the way it should. And if that sort of mentality can butt heads when you talk to people who have been in government for a while, not terribly long with term limits, but have been there for a while. And if you come in and think you know better than them, then he could butt some heads. But if they work together, as they should, because they have a lot of shared ideas, then it could be a very successable governorship.
Yeah. Carrie, what do you think? You got a New Year's resolution for Governor-elect Stitt? Mine is that oil prices stay above $53.
Yeah,
that could
I'll
be the huge
agree with you on
monkey
that.
wrench in the gears. That if oil continues to stay down, that just kind of changes the dynamics of this feeling that we've got money, that we've got some breathing room budget-wise, but that can quickly go away, as we are well aware here in Oklahoma.
I would agree with you.
All right. It's 2 against 1 against 1. So all right. It's not a competition. All right. Mayor David Holt finishing up his first year in office here in a few months. First of 4 years for his term. What do you think is a resolution? I'll go first on this one. That the streetcar is a success.
Yeah, that's my first thought too.
Because if this streetcar that keeps passing by our window here, if it doesn't turn out to be a success, it is the marquee project right now of MAPS, and that if you're going for MAPS 4 and you're trying to sell that to people, and they're thinking, the streetcar has not been a useful item. It was just an expensive toy downtown. That's going to hurt the brand of MAP. So I would say streetcar be successful.
Because it's free is today the last day it's free?
Well, they just extended it, I think, to February 1st. And I imagine that's, I don't know, I think there's a 20% chance this thing stays free forever.
Okay.
Really? I've heard that ridership numbers are still pretty good this week, but there's been some bad weather, so maybe they've plateaued a little bit. But if they keep going down, you want this thing to be successful, and the dynamics change when you start to charge for it.
Yeah.
Now the streetcar is exactly what I said too. It's the biggest thing going in the city right now, and there's been a lot of attention on it because sometimes it doesn't work. They had to shut down because of flooding for a few minutes last week, I think it was. This week they're running on a reduced schedule because the overhead lines have ice on them. That's obviously going to melt, and there has been some concerns by our own Steve Lackmeyer that the displays that show when the streetcar is arriving is not based on an actual time estimate, but rather the location of the streetcar.
Steve has an opinion on that?
Yeah.
I didn't see. Check that out.
It's getting a lot of attention, some of it real negative attention, and it's going to take a lot of goodwill, I think, from the mayor's office to make sure that people keep a positive attitude with the streetcar. And part of that is keeping it free. And that's exactly what he said on Twitter today.
Yeah, and like I said, I think you want it to to be a good service because you've invested in it. You want it to be a good service. But I just think the optics, especially in a year we're going to be, pushing forward with Maps 4, that's going to be really important. Justin, you got one?
We all rode streetcars.
All streetcars.
I would use the word sell. I think he has to sell it to a skeptical public, and the weather is not helping right now. The ice is one thing. I mean, ice is pretty unusual. It shuts down a lot of forms of transportation. The flooding one I thought was a little embarrassing. I think, if it rains a lot, less so here than other places, but rain's pretty common. If that shuts down your streetcar, it's not a good look, in my opinion.
It may help you sell it if Maps 4 truly becomes kind of a more of a neighborhood type project.
Yeah.
I mean, if we are talking about things like a justice center, a jail, and also health centers and stuff like that, then maybe. I mean, I don't think the mayor is going to use this line, but I mean, others can say, listen, we've invested in these projects like the streetcar and the arena. It's time to invest in other projects that are for the neighborhood. How much the next Maps includes of that, we're already hearing some chatter that maybe a new arena at the State Fairground. So there's going to be some of those big ticket projects. But we all said streetcar, so we're all on the same page on that one. All right, Representative Horn, Kendra Horn, we've already talked about a little bit today. But what do you feel like is her New Year's resolution for this year?
I think she has to find her place in Congress. You have a lot of outspoken liberal freshmen coming in. It's a very noisy, a very attention-grabbing freshman class. She's not going to be leading it. She's not going to be grabbing the headlines like Ocasio-Cortez or something. She's going to be a little quieter. Obviously, she's much more moderate. And I think she just kind of has to find her place there. It's not to say she can't do it or won't do it. She just has to, I think, a little bit. And I'm not sure what that means exactly. I'm not sure exactly what she's going for, what area of expertise she carves out. But I think that's kind of the challenge right now.
Yeah.
Over the next year, there's going to be a lot of House Democrats versus Trump news and votes, and I think she has to be resolved to stay far away from that, as far away as she can.
Well, my resolution was going to be that there is not a Trump impeachment vote in front of the House this year. I mean, I'm sure personally she would probably welcome that. She's probably not a fan of the president. But that would be an interesting vote. Now, if there's some kind of evidence that's extremely damning, then that changes things, and you can say, hey, I'm making a vote, even though it'd still probably be a partisan vote. But if the House gets backed in quickly into an impeachment vote, I think that could be an interesting one for her. Maybe not if it's in the first few months of the year, but if we get to the end of the year or even going into next year when she's going to probably face a competitive challenger, I would imagine. That may be a tough one. Maybe not. Maybe CD5 is a very anti-Trump a district. I mean, it definitely is more than other parts of the state. But I think the impeachment one is going to be an interesting.
Yeah. I mean, along the lines of what you all are saying, her challenge is keeping Oklahoma happy, keeping her district happy, but staying true to herself and voting how she thinks she needs to vote. But she has an interesting job ahead of her. I don't envy her right now.
She was great during the campaign at not talking about Trump and putting all those, just the noise of Washington out of her campaign and staying laser focused. I mean, she did a terrific job of it. That's a big part of the reason she won, too, is to avoid talking about some of these other, the issue of the day or the issue of the hour sometimes in Washington.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for her for keeping all that out and just really focusing on these are the issues that I'm running on and not really talking about Trump or any of that other stuff.
Yeah. All right, a couple more. We got just a couple minutes left here. So moving quickly, House Minority Leader Emily Virgin elected the new minority leader headed into 2019. What's a resolution for her?
Pick your battles. I mean, I think any minority leader has to pick your battles carefully. And she's not going to be able to stop everything. She's not going to be able to stop even most things, maybe. But pick out where you want to fight and fight hard. But you can't fight everything. You're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to stop everything.
Yeah.
That's a really good. I think I'm going to actually agree with Justin there. I wrote down something a little different, but as a minority leader, you can't just be against everything. You have to be able to sit down with your majority counterparts, and that may be something that the current leadership in the House and not necessarily the Senate, but definitely the House feel like they haven't gotten in recent years. There's a lot of frustration from Republicans about Democrats and being obstructionists, and I think if there's going to be any compromise, then Representative Virgin's going to have to show that she's willing to do that.
My answer is going to be that the political activism of 2019 or 2018 remains in 2019. What I mean by that is not that necessarily we see another teacher walkout, but that there were a lot of groups, teachers, public employees, people in the health community that were just, frustrated with the state of things, and whether they expressed it at the ballot box or rallies at the Capitol or social media, whatever it is, that's saying that we need to invest in our state. It had an impact. I'd say that one of her resolutions, or one of the things she'd like to see, would be that continues, because that, you're right, she doesn't have a lot of numbers in her caucus, but that could give you a lot of wind at your sails, especially if you try to push for things like Medicaid expansion. And you've got people across the state that are saying, hey, we need this is something that we support. It's going to be important. She can't do it alone. Her caucus can't do it alone. She's going to have to get support across the state.
I would say agree. Public support, keeping public support in her corner, because she has, again, I don't envy her. She has to work with Republicans, but she can't be an obstructionist on everything. So, all
right, the final one here is House Speaker Charles McCall. Resolution for him.
Prevent a revolution from within his own caucus. He has so many new people. And you remember last year that there were deep fractures within the Republican Party, especially in the House, and especially around election time, when you had seemingly members of the House majority running campaigns and running money and running candidates against members of their own caucus. And so, as the Speaker of the House, hoping to have a successful 2019, much more than last year or the year before, you're going to want to hope to have everybody on the same page and not willing to, throw landmines out there.
That's a good one. I like that.
I was going to say, go ahead, Carrie.
Unity within his party. He has an opportunity with so many freshmen coming in to really kind of start fresh. And I think if he can find some unity within his party, I think he can be successful.
I think he needs to communicate a little better. I think the House, the legislature in general, the House in particular, often look reactive, like they're just jumping from crisis to crisis. This should be a calmer year. It should be a better year where he can actually lay out an agenda and follow it through and tell the people of Oklahoma what he wants to do.
Yeah, take advantage of a climate that's not as tumultuous as we've seen in years past. He would probably also agree with Stitt, seeing that price of oil stay up there as well. His job a lot harder if the economy declines. Well, let's end it on this note. Commissioner Blumert, your New Year's resolution.
Man. Okay, at the end of 2019, I would love to, there's 50 million things I want to have done by the end of this year. I would love to have a better understanding of when we can potentially build a new jail or build a new treatment facility.
So by the end of the year, have some kind of details in place on that.
Yeah, by the end of this year. So.
Well, that's a good one, and as you get closer to that, we'll definitely have you back to discuss those efforts.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Commissioner, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being our first guest of 2019.
You're welcome. Day 3.
Yeah, we will definitely have you back. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Political State from the Oklahoman. Once again, staying in podcast and video form. We do have a camera, but moving back to the podcast studio. So if you're listening to this and you aren't already, subscribe to this podcast out each and every week. Justin and I are actually taking the show on the road next week. We're going to be down in Lawton.
Nice.
Governor-elect Kevin Stitt is going to be holding an inaugural. He didn't call it a ball; he called it a bash. It's going to be an inaugural bash with barbecue and a country music person that I'm probably supposed to know, but I don't. It's not Toby Keith. He's at Oklahoma City, I think. But Justin and I are going down to Lawton. We've got a couple guests lined up for that as the governor-elect kind of kicks off his inaugural festivities ahead of his January 14th inauguration. And I think we're going to have some special episodes too, as probably closer to the inauguration and session starts and those kind of things. So continue to check out this Political State podcast each and every week. Well, with Justin and Dale, the commissioner, I'm Ben Felder with the Oklahoman. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week for another episode of Political State.